Hello, this is an unprepared short video about chord tones. I'm referencing a PDF one-page sheet that I think a lot of you have seen already, at least I put it on the classroom, entitled Chord Tones. So, we know what chords are. It's a group of notes played simultaneously, or at least overlapping. Either strummed or played overlapping like that. Excuse my out of tune guitar, it was in tune when I bought it. All of music is based on the default major scale, notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's our default, hence it's the simplest way of describing 8 things, just number them. And from that default set of notes, we derive chords. And every chord that we make is built on note 1, note 3 and note 5, depending on our start point. So if I play an A, that is note 1 from an A chord. So every note in that chord is either a note 1, a note 3 or a note 5. And this is exactly the same for every chord. If I play a B flat chord, note 1 is a B flat. And there's a note 3 and a note 5, which we don't particularly need to even worry about in terms of letters. The only letter note that's ever important is note 1, because that gives the name to the chord. B flat major, note 1 is a B flat. G major, note 1 is a G. The only letter note that matters is note 1. Everything in music follows from that. So, in every chord we play, we should be able to distinguish those 3 chord tones. Chord tone 1, chord tone 3, chord tone 5. Now, depending on the physical finger pattern of the chord tones will not always be staggered 1, 3, 5. They will be mixed up. There could be the 5 as the lowest note, or the 3 or the 1. There could be multiple 1s, multiple 3s, multiple 5s. But every note in a basic chord will be either a 1, a 3 and a 5. In our standard bar chord, the order of notes is 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. Notice there's 3 1s. There's 3 root notes in that chord. There's 2 5s, 5, 5, and there's only 1 3. That's why when you change from, for example, B flat major as a standard bar chord to B flat minor, you've only got to change 1 note, because there's only 1/3 in that chord. And as we should know, the difference between a minor chord and a major chord is note 3. That's the important note, note 3, the 3rd. Regardless of what letter note the chord is. So our task is to learn all of those 1, 3 and 5s in every chord shape that we know. We don't have to learn it in every key because every chord shape is the same. What I mean is, every time we play that shape, the 1, the 3 and the 5 are in the same place, regardless of whether it's a B flat chord, like there, or a C chord, or a D flat chord, or an A flat chord. If we know the pattern, we know the order of the chord tones. So let's do that again. We've got note 1, note 5, note 1, note 3, note 5, note 1, or note 8. So if we're playing on that arbitrary A flat chord, you could write down, or you could remember, or you could ask someone else who's playing it, or they could ask you to play the 3rd in that chord. That's the chord tone. They're asking you to play chord tone 3 in that chord. So you've only got one of them, and it's there. So there's chord tone 3. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Chord tone 3, chord tone 3. There's only one chord tone 3 in that shape. So that's the one that we want to play, regardless of what the chord actually is. If I'm playing a C chord, chord tone 3 is again same place. G string, second finger. If I'm playing a B chord, again the chord tone's in the same place on the G string, second finger. So you get the idea. When we learn a chord shape, we should know the chord tones within that shape. And if it's a basic chord, it will be either chord tone 1, 3 or 5. If I'm playing a G chord, or the music is written G chord, I don't even have to play a chord. I just see that the music is written G chord. And someone says, play the 5 in that chord. Well, I've got options. I've got the 5 here. Note 5, note 5, note 5. Or I've got the 5, an octave above on the B string. They're both note 5s. You're both right. Hey, you're right twice. That's note 5. No one's going to stipulate what octave to play in. Note 5 is note 5 in that chord. So you start to learn that in that shape, our standard bar chord, major bar chord, in that shape, note 5 is on the A string and on the B string. That's where it lives. We need to know that, because then we can start stringing these chord tones together to make riffs. We can say, play a riff that goes 3-5, 3-5, 3-5 in chord tones, regardless of what key you're in. So if I just randomly play a chord, if I know where the 3 and the 5 is, I can do that. 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. I could go to the low 5. 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. Both correct. Because chord tone 5 is chord tone 5. There isn't any really direction there. They could say 3 to the low 5, in which case it will be 3 down to the 5. It's a little bit different to note numbers. Note numbers, we follow the high or low of the numbers exactly. So there's a difference between going up to the 5 or going down. Chord tones, slightly a bit different. So there's 3 and 5. If you're a vocalist learning chord tones, you'd sing that. 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. Those are chord tones 3 and 5. So we need to know those in every chord, so that when we play that shape, we know where the notes are. Of course, the bottom line is we should know where note 1 is. Because if we don't know where the root note is in that chord, how do we know what the full name of the chord is? If I don't know the root note is there, or there, or there, how can I tell you what letter note that chord is? I can't. I would be pretty non-communicative as a musician, and we need to describe what we're doing as musicians. Otherwise, people don't really have much confidence in us. So I need to know that that is note 1, and also that is a B flat. Hence, that is a B flat chord. So we should know the 1, the root note, in every chord already, because that's on all of my chord diagrams and the vast majority of all other chord diagrams in the world, or they should be anyway, if the teacher's got any sense. The root note is vital, otherwise you don't know what chord you're playing. So that's our most obvious shape, but of course we've got all the other shapes as well, haven't we? We've got that shape. Type 2 bar chord. The root note now is on the A string and the G string. So, bottom line is we should already know that the root note is there on the A string and on the G. So that's note 1, isn't it? So if someone says, I'm playing an E flat chord for no reason whatsoever, someone says play an E flat chord and play the 1 in that chord, then that's it. Bum, 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 bum. That's it, chord tone 1. Very simple melody. I should also know where the 5 is, and the 3, because I'm playing those 1, 5, 1, 3, and there's a 5 on the bottom string as well. So I should know those chord tones in that shape, and every other shape. If you know other major chord shapes, like this one, root notes on the A string and the B string, I should know my 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. I should know those chord tones, because then if I'm making a melody, I can define what I'm playing over any chord that's major. That's our default, isn't it? So if you ask a musician to play 1, 3, 5 in G major anywhere in the world, they'll play the same thing. They'll play the 1, the 3, and the 5. That's it. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. Those are the chord tones. A very universal idea. It's exactly the same idea as note numbers, except that note numbers are reference to a mother key, the overriding key of the song. And they don't change when the chord changes, or they don't change because the chord changes. Note 1 in the scale is note 1 in the scale, regardless of what chord it's played over. So the focus with note numbers is the overriding, the master key, if you want, the master key, the master scale, the mother key. Whereas in chord tones, the reference is always the chord in question at that time. So whatever the chord is at that point in the music, could be any chord, couldn't it? Could be chords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Could even be a chord that's not in the home key at all, just a random chord. Chord tones relate to that chord at that point in time, regardless of what it is. So you can't play chord tones unless you know what the chord is. If you don't know what the chord is, the letter note of the chord, you can't play correct chord tones. I can play chord tones in a major chord, but without knowing that it's, say, a D flat major chord, or a B flat major chord, or a C, I can't play the exact notes. So we must know what the chord is, hence we have the chord diagram. So if we were playing a piece of music and we got to an A chord, and you knew that the riff you were playing was, say, 3, 5, 3, 5, as chord tones, when you get to that A chord, you could play 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, regardless of the home key, regardless of the key you started the song in, regardless of the mother scale, if you want. You're literally just following every chord, and you're referencing your note from the chord you're on at the time. So if it's an ensemble, everyone needs to be on the same chord. Of course, that would be a normal thing. That's the standard way of thinking of chord tones. Oh, another thing, if it's a 4-note chord, like, say, a dominant chord, that's 1, 3, 5, flat 7. As on the sheet, A dominant 7, the notes are 1, 3, 5, flat 7. Those are now the chord tones. Now there's 4 chord tones. 1, 3, 5, flat 7. So we need to know the flat 7 as well as the 1, 3, 1, 3, 5. So I've got the 1, the flat 7, the 5, the 3. 1, flat 7, 5, 3. That's the really simple explanation of chord tone, hopefully. Just referencing the shapes you're playing. Now, we are playing these shapes because we're guitarists and our tuning is the way it is. But chord tones is more universal than that. It's not anything to do with guitar, per se. It's the notes in a chord. Now, in that shape, the bottom 2 notes are 1 and 5, but that's only because of the tuning of the guitar. The chord tones in that actual chord are 1, 3, 5, in any order. So, not only do we need to know the chord tones in the shape we're playing, we need to know the chord tones if we could actually play all of them in any order. So, in other words, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. I can't play that bottom 1, 3, 5 because it's 1, 5, 1. 1, 3, 5. I've got 2 notes on that string. And as we know, when we play a chord, we cannot play 2 notes on the same string. So knowing the chord tone, the possible chord tones, is what we need to do as well, regardless of whether we can physically play them in a group of notes. The 1, 3, 5 higher up is easy to play because it falls under our fingers. But in that particular shape, type 1 bar chord, the bottom 3 notes are 1, 5, 8. But we still need to know that that third, 1, 3, is there. And that comes from the scale. You can think of a chord tone, or chord tones in a chord, as a key, a scale, with the chord in question being the key. So if the chord is A7, you can think of A dominant as being the home key. Hence you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 8. You can think that way. Exactly the same. Chord tones are just like a new key in every chord. Every chord gives you a new key and a new set of 7 note numbers. And also any flats or sharps as well you want to throw in for good measure. That's one way of thinking about it. If you see a new chord, like that's a D flat major chord, you could think, oh, at that point, I'm now in D flat major. You can think that. It's the same way. We say chord tones just to make it simpler to say. That's what chord tones means. It's a bit like changing key on every chord. Why would we want to do that? Well, there are some good reasons, like I've written on the sheet. If we've got a melody that follows the chords exactly, so it might be 1, 3, 5 over chord 1, and then that might jump up 4 notes and be the same thing over chord 4. So rather than say 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 4, 6, 8, 4, 6, 8, it might be easier to say 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5 over the first chord, and then 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5 over the second chord, which happens to be chord 4. Notice what I'm doing? In the first chord, I'm using the chord tones. If that's our chord 1, then those are the note numbers as well. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. When we change to the new chord, I'm orientating my thinking. My new 1 is the one of the chord, so I'm going 1, 3, 5 of the chord. That's easier to write down because we've only got to write 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5, but we've got to register that they are chord tones. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. Those are all 1, 3, 5s, aren't they? Following the chord. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. I could go to any chord. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. In that case, it's 1, 3, 5 over a B flat chord, 1, 3, 5 over a D flat chord, 1, 3, 5 over an E flat chord. I'm just following the chords. I don't need to know why the chords are the chords, just following the chords, and I'm playing the chord tones. That's easier to write down and easier to learn because all I'm worried about is those chord tones 1, 3, 5 in each chord. If I know the chord shape, I'm playing them already. I just need to know how to define them. So that's one very good example. In Night Train, 1, 8, 5, flat 7, 6, 5, 3, 1. Those are chord tones, aren't they? And then it goes to the 4 chord, but the chord tones stay the same. But of course the notes are different because the chord changes. The chord has changed. With chord tones, the notes change if the chords change because you're following like being towed by a vehicle. You have to follow the new chord, regardless what it is. So an example like Night Train, that's a perfect example of good use of chord tones because the riff doesn't change. All that it does is move up and down following the chords. So it will be much more complicated writing that in terms of note numbers because every new chord, all the note numbers will be different. And we think, oh God, there's lots of note numbers in this. There aren't really. There's just those note numbers in every chord. So that's a good example. So that's sort of like level 2 of chords. Chord tones. Knowing all the notes surrounding that chord, regardless of the actual physical shape you can do. So one way of doing that is playing the scale of the chord. That's a dominant chord, so we need to... Whoops, sorry, my screen's gone off. That's a dominant chord. So we need to be able to play the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 8. Those are the chord tones in that chord. All of them. Regardless of, obviously we can't play all 7 notes at the same time on guitar anyway. We could on piano. This is why chord tones are not, they're not orientated to guitar per se. We just happen to be playing guitar. So I need to know all those chord tones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, flat 7, 8. Because I'm playing a dominant chord. Doesn't matter that I can't play them all together. So the next level of chord tones is knowing all the chord tones in that chord, regardless of whether you can physically play them all at the same time, which we can't, of course. The next level, what I call level 3 of chord tones, is chord tones that are not, a bit like what we just said, the option of playing all the chord tones, as if we were playing them in the chord, but the chord doesn't need to indicate that. In other words, say we're playing a G chord. Someone says, play the chord tones 1, 3, 5. So you're doing 1, 1, 3, 5, 1, 1, 3, 5, 1, etc. 1, 3, 5, 1, 1, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 5, 3, 1. We're playing those chord tones. And then they say, I'll play 1, 3, 5, 6. And you think, 6? It's a major chord. It's not a major 6 chord. What do you mean? Well, if we play note 6, as if it was in the chord, it's now in the chord, isn't it? So if you play that note, you're making the chord a 6 chord. If you play that note with a guitarist who's playing a G chord, together you're making a G6 chord. It doesn't matter whether the note is in the chord symbol or not. It could be, and it will be when you play. So you can imagine every chord symbol as having all of those. So you can say, okay, I'll play 1, 3, 5, 6, 1, 3, 5, 6, regardless of whether it's in the chord symbol. It doesn't need to be in the chord symbol. When chord symbols are written, musicians know what notes they can add to that chord symbol that will work harmoniously, or even discordantly if they want. We know what notes we can add when we're improvising. We can always add those, we can always write those chord tones down. So, 1, 3, 5, 6. We don't have to object and say, well, there's no 6 written in the G chord. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. A chord symbol is more a group of notes that are options at that point in the music. Are good options. So when we see a G chord, we can always we can decide, we can write down, or we can give, having been given instructions by someone else, we can play any chord tones within that octave. Supposing we're playing a G chord, and your chord tones are written down, you're reading them maybe, or someone's telling you, like they say, oh, can you play the 5 and the flat 7 in that chord? Well, you might say, well, it's not a dominant chord, it's just a G chord. It doesn't matter. You can still add the flat 7 as if it was written a G7, and it's there. 1, 3, 5, sure, what did I say? 5, flat 7, 5, flat 7. There we go. 5, flat 7. Standard bar chord. Note 5, note flat 7. Or note 5, note flat 7. We don't have to actually have that note in the chord symbol to play chord tones. So chord tones, they're based on the chord in question, but they can include more notes than are actually in the chord. Otherwise you'd be limiting yourself. Chord tones wouldn't really work in that situation. So basically a chord tone can be any of 12 notes available. The 12 notes we've only got in music. They can be any of those. The important thing is they're based on the chord. The note 1 of the chord, the root note. Chord tones are based on the root note of the chord. If you don't know the root note of the chord, you cannot play chord tones. Well, you certainly can't play note 1. You wouldn't know note 3 and not note 1. Note 1, the root note is the note we learn first, because it names the chord. So without the root note, you're up the creek, basically. So we need to know not only the 1, 3, 5, our basic chord, but also the other obvious extensions like 1-3-5-7 or 1-3-5 flat 7 or 1-3-5-9, which is the same as note 2. So 1-3-5-9, that's the 9. Doesn't matter that it's not written in the chord symbol at that point in time. Musicians use chord symbols generally in terms of musical logic. They don't have to stick exactly to just the notes in the symbol. I could also say, I want you to add the flat 9. And obviously we've got the idea that we don't have to say, excuse me sir, there's no flat 9 in the chord symbol. We can still add it. So we've got, say we go 1-3-5-7 flat 9. 1-3-5, sorry, 1-3-5 flat 7. 1-3-5 flat 7 flat 9. That's the flat 9, that's where it is. So obviously the 9, which is the 2, flattened. That's it. I can do it low. 1-3-5 flat 7 flat 9. It's just a note number, but in reference to the chord, in reference to the note 1 of the chord. That's it. So now we can use chord tones to reference any note in the whole octave. Any of the 12 notes in the whole octave we can reference as chord tones. As long as you write chord tones at the beginning. Obviously, if you don't stipulate you're using chord tones, no one really, you would assume that they're note numbers in the overriding key. I assume you'd assume that. Assumption of an assumption. You certainly wouldn't know for sure. So we need to write chord tones. That's why musicians say chord tones. If you're playing a chord there, and I do this, I need to be able to say that I'm playing 3-5-6-5, 3-5-6-5-3-1 as chord tones. I need to be able to say that. Incidentally, that's exactly the same as saying 3-5, 3-5, whatever I played, 6-5-3-1. In the key, if I'm playing chord 1. So when you're playing chord 1 in the key, all of your note numbers are actually identical to the chord tones because you're playing note 1, chord 1 in that key. So in the key of G major, for instance, chord 1 is G, isn't it? The scale is G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because our chord hasn't changed, the chord tones are also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So when we're playing the 1 chord in the key, G major in this case, chord tones are note numbers. That's where they start in the same place. If chord 1 is chord 1 and it doesn't change, then the chord tones are the note numbers. But as we know, I don't know a song in existence where there's only 1 chord. Certainly not in terms of Western music. A lot of songs have 2 chords. I don't know any that have 1 chord. You can answers on a postcard if you know any. So that's that's as brief as I can make it, covering all of the details of chord tones, and that's as complete. You can't get any more in depth than the option to have all 12 notes. We only have 12 notes in music, so that's as far as we can go. That's the last scene in the film. That's it. Our option for chord tones is any of 12 notes, regardless of whether they're actually in the chord symbol at the time. That's it. And first of all, we should know our chord tones anyway, just in terms of knowing about music, you know. Secondly, we should absolutely, definitely, there should be a law against it that we don't know note 1, chord tone 1, because that's the root note. We need to know the root note in chord shapes, otherwise we don't know what chord we're playing. Just one thing to add, open chords as well. Know your chord tones in your open chords. We know that all basic open chords are 1-3-5, so we need to know where the 1-3-5 is in those chords, because you could be playing a melody, you could be thinking of the open chord shape. So 1-3-5, 1-3-5, 1. And all the possible notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And all the Even more possible notes. 1, flat 2, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, flat 6, 6, flat 7, 7, 8. That's every possible chord tone that we can differentiate in terms of music theory. We can't describe notes in between those. Why would we? We've got frets for a very good reason. Those are all of our notes. We can't define notes in between. You could say a bit higher than an A and a bit flatter than a B flat, but we don't define that in music generally. Okay, honestly, I tried to make that short, but as you know, I'm incapable of making short videos. See you later.